Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to our live session today. We will be discussing modifiers today, a very important component of English grammar. And we're going to see what modifiers are and how many types of modifiers there are in English grammar, and what are those types, how do they function, and what do they actually do, and how wonderful they actually help us making, they actually help us completing sentences, right? Okay, so I'll be taking you to the slides that I have prepared for you. Modifiers. So in English grammar, we generally have three specific categories of modifiers. The first category being, of course, the articles, which we discussed already last week. Today, we're going to discuss adjectives, and hopefully tomorrow we will discuss adverbs. So what are modifiers? Modifiers modify. Just like we modify a car, we also modify our English sentences with modifiers. A modifier changes, clarifies, qualifies, or limits a specific word in a sentence to add emphasis, explanation, or detail. In English grammar, we have three parts of speech that function as modifiers: articles, adjectives, and adverbs, right? So as you can see, these three parts of speech, articles, adjectives, and adverbs, are all modifiers. How so? Because, or why so? What they do is they modify. They modify nouns, they modify verbs, they modify adverbs, they modify adjectives as well. Okay? But specifically today, we are going to discuss how adjectives modify nouns. Okay. Moving forward, what are adjectives? Adjectives are the words that define qualities or states of being of their corresponding nouns. Here you go. Adjectives are the words that define qualities or states of being of their corresponding nouns. In simpler words, adjectives modify nouns. Examples: good, bad, small, big, black, white, one, two, etc. All these examples or all these words are adjectives. And what do? They define qualities. They define qualities of nouns. So basically, when you say he is a good man, right? You have actually modified or defined better or described or given more, you've just given more information about a man. When you have said that this is a good man or he is a good man, you've just not only said, you're not only talking about a man, but you're coming up with more information about the man by saying that he is a good man. Now, here in this case, the word good is an adjective, and this word, the word or the adjective good, is modifying the following noun, which in this case is man. Now let's take a look at the examples here. Tom wore a dashing suit at the event last night. Tom wore a dashing suit at the event last night. Jerry owns a black Mercedes. Jerry owns a black Mercedes. And the first example, Tom wore a dashing suit at the event last night. Here, which is the noun that we are modifying here? The noun is suit, right? We modify the noun suit. However, what is the adjective that we have chosen to modify the noun suit? The adjective here is dashing. So when we say Tom wore a dashing suit at the event last night, we specifically mean the suit that he wore last night, maybe at an event, and that the suit looked very or quite dashing. So you say Tom wore a dashing suit at the event last night. So you did not only just mean that he wore a suit, but you gave more information about that suit when you said a dashing suit, right? So the word dashing modified its following noun, which is suit. Okay. And the second example, as you can see, Jerry owns a black Mercedes. Here, the color black is also modifying the proper noun Mercedes, right? Mercedes is, of course, the brand name of a car. So Jerry owns a black Mercedes. When you say a black Mercedes, with the help of the word black, you're modifying, or you're saying you're giving extra information about the Mercedes that Jerry owns. So you say Jerry owns a black Mercedes. Also note the articles that precede both the adjectives, right? Tom wore a dashing suit. So here you have the article a before dashing. So a, in another way, or a as well, is modifying the entire, a is also modifying the noun in this case. So a, being an article, is performing as a modifier, just as we have discussed, right? That articles as well are modifiers. So Tom wore a dashing suit at the event last night. Jerry owns a black Mercedes. Okay. Ninzamoni says, Assalamu alaikum, sir, how are you? Well, wa alaikum assalam, I'm fine. Alhamdulillah, thank you for asking. I hope you are fine as well. Salahuddin Rana says, good evening, sir. Good evening to you too, Salahuddin Rana. Okay, now moving forward to the second paragraph, we have, notice in each example above, the adjective is right before the noun it is modifying. However, the case is not so all the time. Many a time we find adjectives coming after a noun and linking verb. Yesterday we were learning verbs, remember? And we learned this particular type of verb called a linking verb, or the linking verb, right? So what does a linking verb do? A linking verb actually links a noun to a piece of information of the noun or about the noun, and to a piece of information linking to the noun, right? So when I say Tom is tall, take a look at the examples. Tom is tall, right? So here the noun is, of course, Tom, the proper noun, the subject, and the information about Tom is the word tall, which is an adjective. So the linking verb in this sentence is, of course, the verb is. So Tom is tall. So not necessarily you will always find adjectives right before nouns. Adjectives may also come after a noun, in a sentence where, of course, the noun precedes the linking verb, and the linking verb precedes the adjective. Okay, so Tom is tall here. First we have the proper noun, then we have the linking verb, and then we have the adjective. And the linking verb is basically linking the adjective to a proper noun, right? Okay, Jerry is short. Jerry is short. So similarly here in this case as well, as you can see, the word or the adjective short is giving you more information about Jerry's height. So when you say Jerry is short, in this case as well, the adjective hasn't been put before the proper noun, but rather after it. And it has been connected to it or linked to it with the help of a linking verb, which in this case is, right? So Jerry is short. Okay, I hope this is clear. However, for your reference, I would like to read the entire slide once again. So what are adjectives? Adjectives are the words that define qualities or states of being of their corresponding nouns. In simple words, adjectives modify nouns, right? Adjectives tell you more information about a noun or about their corresponding nouns. Okay, some very common examples of adjectives are good, bad, small, big, black, white. Numbers are also adjectives such as 1, 2, 3, 500, 1,000. These are also adjectives because these are information, these are qualities, right? Okay. Tom wore a dashing suit at the event last night. Jerry owns a black Mercedes. Notice in each example above, the adjective is right before the noun. It is modifying. However, the case is not so all the time. Many a time we find adjectives coming after a noun and a linking verb. Consider the following examples. Tom is tall, Jerry is short. Okay, we have a question here. All right, Sanjana Tharanum says, very good evening, sir. Very good evening to you too, Sanjana. And here we have the query by Ninza Muni. So she's asking, what is the relation between adjective and linking verb, sir? The relation or the thing that I have tried to portray here is that generally adjectives are put right before the nouns they modify, right? Such as, for example, good man, bad boy, or dashing suit or black Mercedes, right? So most of the time, or usually what we see is adjectives are put before nouns, the nouns that we modify. But this is not the case for, I mean to say that this doesn't happen all the time. There are times when the adjective will come after a noun, right? The adjective will come or does come after a noun, such as the example, Tom is tall. Here, the noun is, of course, Tom, and the adjective is tall, and the adjective has come after the noun, right? But how have you, or how do we connect this noun and the adjective that modifies the noun? We connect this, or we make this connection. We make this connection by the help, or through the help, or through a linking verb. We make the connection with the help of a linking verb, which in this case is the verb is. So Tom is tall. Tom is tall. Here the verb is a linking verb that is basically linking the noun to its adjective, or is linking the adjective to its noun. You understand? I hope so. Okay, we have a question here by Ashik Rahman. He says, mangoes are farmed in Rajshahi. In this sentence, why can't we use the before mangoes? The sentence implies not just a random place's mango, but the specific mangoes of Rajshahi. Well, you see, here, when you say mangoes are farmed in Rajshahi, you're talking about mangoes in general, right? You're talking about mangoes in general. You're not being very specific. You're not being specific about any specific group of mangoes or any specific collection of mangoes that may have come from Rajshahi or that may have been farmed in Rajshahi, right? So you want to say that mangoes are farmed in Rajshahi. It's a very general statement. There is no specificity or there is no specification in this particular sentence. You're talking about mangoes in general, that mangoes are farmed in Rajshahi, right? Which is why there is no, we're not putting the definite article the before mangoes here. However, if you are being very specific about a specific collection of mangoes that may have been farmed in Rajshahi, for that case, or yes, in that case, you could very well put the definite article the before mangoes, such as, for example, the mangoes that have been farmed in Rajshahi, the mangoes that have been farmed in Rajshahi, or the mangoes that were farmed in Rajshahi have arrived finally. The mangoes that were farmed in Rajshahi have arrived finally. You mean to say that you've ordered mangoes from Rajshahi and a very specific type of mangoes, or maybe you have ordered mangoes from many places, not just from Rajshahi, maybe from Kumillan, maybe from Chittagong, maybe from other areas where mangoes are farmed, right? But you want to be very specific about the mangoes that have come from Rajshahi. So now, since there are many places from which you have ordered mangoes, now you want to be specific about the mangoes that have come from Rajshahi. So in that case, you may just say that the mangoes that I ordered, or the mangoes that have been, the mangoes that were farmed in Rajshahi have arrived. You follow? Right. But if you're going to talk about mangoes in general, or mangoes that are farmed in Rajshahi in general, you just don't say the mangoes are farmed in Rajshahi. You just say mangoes are farmed in Rajshahi, because that's a very general statement. But if you were ordering mangoes from many places, from Rajshahi, Bogura, Kumilla, Mymensingh, right? And you've ordered mangoes from 5 places. But you want to be very specific about the mangoes that have come from Rajshahi. In that case, you can definitely, of course, specify the mangoes that the mangoes coming from Rajshahi. You could say that the mangoes that were farmed in Rajshahi have arrived at my place, right? Have arrived in my place, or something like that. Okay. All right. We have another question here by Misbah-uddin Ahmed. He's asking, the patient is an 85-year-old male presenting with cardiac issues. Please explain why is an used here? You mean to say why do we prefer an, the indefinite article an before 85-year-old, right? It's because, of course, this is not any specific person. You see, we also put articles when we want to discuss a type of something, right? When we want to discuss a particular type of something. So we say the patient is an 85-year-old, and we're putting an in this case, of course, because of the sound, because of the phonetics, or because of the sound that the word 85 makes, right? And it is making a vowel sound. So we say an 85-year-old male. But if you are to ask that, why are we not specifying this particular patient? It's because we're not talking about the patient in this case, but we're talking about a type that the patient possesses. And what type are we talking about? Is age type. So since we're talking about an age type, certain types or types types are preceded by articles. When we want to talk about a type of something, we bring in articles. Specifically, we bring in the indefinite articles, either a or an, right? Okay, how so? I'll be more clear. For example, when you want to talk about the type of profession that you belong to, right? When you want to talk about what you are or what you do professionally, right? What do you say? I am a teacher. I am a doctor. I am a lawyer. I am a corporate service holder, right? When you say so, notice every time you say a doctor, an engineer, or a teacher, right? Or a corporate service holder. So every time you're saying that I am a corporate service holder, you just can't say I am doctor. Can you say so? If you do so, then you're grammatically incorrect, right? So you say I am a doctor. So yes, of course, you are a doctor, but why are you bringing in the article a in this case? You're doing so because you're discussing a type of something, the type of profession that you belong to. So since you're discussing a type, you're bringing in the indefinite articles in this case, right? There you go. Okay, we have another question by Taif Talukdar. So I would like to ask you a question from previous class. How the word train be a dynamic verb? Of course, why not? Train, right? When you say train, you're not talking about the vehicle train. You're not talking about the railway transportation. You're talking about training, right? So training is not a stative verb. I mean, it's not a non-action verb. It is an action verb. It's because you need to take some action to train. Now, if, for example, I am an English language trainer, so I train people on how to speak English or on how to write English better, right? Or you could be training in a gym to make yourself fit, right? So there is action involved when you train, correct? So since there is action involved in training, that is why we consider train as a dynamic verb and not a static verb. I hope your query is answered. Okay, then someone has another question, I think. Sorry, I really haven't understood your question here. Same here, brother, answered have, but that was incorrect. Okay. Yeah. No. Adjectives only modify nouns. Adjectives do not modify adverbs. Adjectives, however, at times could modify pronouns, but that's an exception. So for now, we should know that adjectives specifically modify nouns, right? But yes, adverbs are more versatile, and we'll discuss adverbs tomorrow, inshallah. And when we will discuss our adverbs, we'll come to know that adverbs not only modify adverbs, but they modify verbs, they modify adjectives as well. But for as long as for adjectives, they only modify nouns and nothing else. Generally, yes, but there are exceptional cases. But before we go to exceptional cases, we need to learn the general rules first. Okay, Taif has something else to say. Sorry, I got it now. I thought the vehicle train. I'm sorry. All right, good to know that you're clear on this. Okay, so as I was saying, adjectives are the words that define qualities or states of being of their corresponding nouns. In simpler words, adjectives modify nouns. Examples: good, bad, small, big, black, white, want to, etc. Tom wore a dashing suit at the event last night. Jerry owns a black Mercedes. Notice in each case, or in each example above, the adjective is right before the noun. It is, before the noun is modifying. However, the case is not so all the time. Many a time we find adjectives coming after a noun and a linking verb. Consider the following examples. Tom is tall, Jerry is short. Okay, moving forward to the next slide. Uses of adjectives. I think we have another query here. I'm going to take this query. Nilay Hassan says, if I say I'm realizing the matter indicates an action, that means it is a dynamic verb. Can you realize it, please? Can you explain it, please? Well, no. In this case, if you're asking me if realize is a dynamic verb or not, I would say that realize is not. Realize is actually a stative verb, because when you realize something, you don't physically pursue any action, do you? Of course not. Realization is a state of mind, or is an action of mind. You're acting, you're thinking about something, and you're coming to make terms with realization. So realization is actually a mental state, right? A mental action. It has nothing to do with your body, or it has nothing to do with your person or with your physicality. So we only consider verbs as action verbs when you actually take a physical action to pursue something, such as, for example, playing cricket, or talking, or fighting, or running, or walking, jogging. You see, in all these verbs, you do some action, you pursue some sort of physical action, right? Which is why these verbs known as action verbs, because you're in action. But when you're not in action and you have something with you, such as, for example, if I say that I own a business. If you say I own a business, right? So here the verb own is not an action, because owning is a state of something, right? So it's a stative verb. It's having something. It's possession. So when you possess something, you don't necessarily take any action, but you rather have it. So in that case, possession, or possessing something, or owning something, or the word or the verb own itself is a stative verb. It's a state verb. It's not an action verb. Similarly with realization as well. When you realize something, you don't necessarily take an action in a physical sense, right? What you do is you're having a realization in your mind. So that's a situation, that's a state. So that's a stative verb. Okay? I hope it's clear. All right. Now we're going to see what uses of adjectives are. What uses of adjectives we have. So adjectives tell us how much or how many of something we want or are talking about. Many a time we use more than one adjective to define or modify a noun. When we have two adjectives of equal importance describing a noun, we must separate them with a comma or a conjunction such as and or. Such equally important adjectives are known as coordinate adjectives. Consider the following examples. I am looking for a cheap second-hand car. I am looking for a cheap second-hand car. My new dog is small and good-tempered. Now follow this. We modify nouns with more than one adjective, right? You could possibly use two or more than two adjectives to modify a noun, to talk about a noun, to define or describe a noun, such as, for example, saying that I'm looking for a cheap second-hand car. Now you've actually used two adjectives to define to modify the noun car, right? You just not only want a car, but you want a cheap car. First adjective, cheap. The second adjective you've used, or we're using here, is second-hand. You're not going to buy a first-hand car. You want to buy a second-hand car, right? So you're actually coming up with two adjectives to define your noun car, or to modify your noun car. So you just not only want to buy a car, you just not only want to buy a car, but you want to buy a cheap car, a second-hand car. So a cheap second-hand car, right? Okay, so when you define or modify nouns with more than one adjective, and if each of the adjectives that you're using is equally important, right? Then you need to separate these adjectives with a comma. Okay, you follow? I'll repeat this again. I'm looking for a cheap second-hand car. Now the word cheap and the word second-hand both are defining the word, the noun car. You want to buy a cheap car, and you want the car to be second-hand as well. You don't want to buy a cheap first-hand car, or you don't want to buy an expensive second-hand car. You want to buy a cheap second-hand car. Now, both these adjectives are defining the noun car, right? Okay, so I'm looking for a cheap second-hand car. So since you've come up with two adjectives that are defining the noun, right? You need to separate these adjectives with a comma, cheap and second-hand. Now follow, both these adjectives are equally important, as in the word cheap is not any way less important than the adjective cheap is in no way less important than the following adjective, secondhand. Neither is secondhand any less important than the word cheap, because the car needs to be cheap and equally it needs to be secondhand. So when you have equal adjectives or adjectives of equal importance defining a noun, you need to separate those adjectives with commas. If two, then you want to put one comma between the two. If you've got three adjectives defining a noun, three adjectives of equal importance, then you put two commas in between the three adjectives. Okay? All right. If you don't want to put commas and you've got only two adjectives defining or modifying a noun, what you could possibly do is you could also choose to put and, the coordinating conjunction and or between the two. Such as, for example, take a look at the second example here. My new dog is small and good-tempered, right? My new dog is small and good-tempered. Now here in this case, both the adjectives have been put after the noun is mentioned, right? So my new dog, so the noun phrase, my new dog, and then you have the linking verb, linking the noun phrase to the adjectives. You have my new dog is small and good-tempered, right? Or you, in another way, you could say, this is a small and good-tempered dog. This is a small and good-tempered dog. So you could say small and good-tempered because both these adjectives are equally important, defining the noun, the dog. And however, you could also choose to not put the coordinating conjunction and just separate the two with a comma. So you could say, this is a small, comma, good-tempered dog. That would also work if you did so. Okay. I think we have a query from Faisal Bari. How do we identify transitive and transitive verb with a single word like promise? With a single word like promise. Okay, you need to clarify me or rectify me if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. So you're basically asking whether the verb promise is a transitive or an intransitive verb, right? Well, promise is a transitive verb. Yes, it's because if you consider promise as a verb, right? Now promise can be a verb, promise can also be a noun. But if you're talking about promise as a verb, then it definitely is a transitive verb because when you basically ask someone to promise you, right? So what do you say? Promise me that you will not do this ever again, or promise me that you will not leak this secret, or promise me that you will buy me this, promise me that you will do this for me. So every time right after promise, you bring in an object or a noun or a pronoun, right? You don't follow promise with a preposition, do you? You don't. You don't follow promise with a prepositional phrase or with a preposition. You immediately put a noun or a pronoun right after promise, like I keep saying that promise me that you will do this, right? Like we say, the promise me that you will do this. So right after promise, you're saying me, or I promise you that I will not do this. I promise you that yes, I will deliver this for you, right? So therefore, promise is definitely a transitive verb, given you're considering promise as a verb. But on the other hand, promise can also function as a noun. Such as, for example, you could say that you made me a promise, meaning you gave me a promise. So in this case, promise is not a verb, but a noun. I hope your query is answered. Okay, so Aldin Rana says, is that true if we ask a statement by, when, where, how, we find the modifier? Coming back to you in a moment. All right. Is it true if we ask a statement by when, where, how, we find the modifier? Well, not precisely. I don't really follow such a formulae to learn grammar or to practice grammar. I rather go for the deliberate rules that grammar has or that grammar offers for us to learn grammar. Okay, so I'm really not sure how to answer this particular question of yours. Pardon me. Okay. Russell Arman is asking me to repeat. Please say again where we can use comma and where and. Okay. Well, the thing that I've been saying is that when you have two adjectives defining a noun, and both the adjectives are of equal importance, right? Such as, for example, cheap and secondhand. Both these adjectives are equally important and equally defining the noun car, because your car cannot be just cheap. Your car cannot be just a secondhand car. You want your car to be cheap and secondhand both. So both these adjectives are equal important. Neither of the two is less important than the other, right? So when you have such adjectives are known as coordinate adjectives. And when you have coordinate adjectives right before a noun, modifying the noun, you separate the two with a comma or and. Both can go. You could say, I'm looking for a cheap and I'm looking for a cheap and second-hand car. You could say so. You could say that I'm looking for a cheap and second-hand car. At the same time, or what you could do is not put the coordinating conjunction and rather just put a comma between the two, saying that I'm looking for a cheap, comma, second-hand car. Both are fine. Both ways are good. Okay. Similarly, my new dog is small and good-tempered, right? But when you bring a noun before, when you put a noun before the adjectives that define the noun, right? In such cases, if you have two adjectives defining a noun, it's the natural rule is, of course, to put the coordinating conjunction and or between the two adjectives that modify the noun that has been put before before the adjectives have been put. Such as, my new dog is small and good-tempered. You couldn't possibly say, my new dog is small, comma, good-tempered. That would be incorrect if you did so. So what you have to do is you have to say, or you have to write, my new dog is small and good-tempered. Okay? Or you could say, this dog is small. Sorry, this is a small and good-tempered dog. Or this is a small, comma, good-tempered dog. All right? Both ways are fine. Okay, I hope your query is answered. Moving on to the next slide, we have another use of adjectives, or more uses of adjectives. 4 adjectives. So when we have 2 or more adjectives of unequal importance describing a noun. Now, so far we were discussing that what do we do with adjectives that are of equal importance, right? We know that we can put them right before a noun, and we separate them either with a comma or we put a coordinating conjunction between the two equal important adjectives that are modifying the noun, right? But now you have unequally important or adjectives of unequal importance describing or defining or modifying a noun. So what do we do with them? Let's just read first. When we have 2 or more adjectives of unequal importance describing a noun, we must not separate them with a comma or a conjunction. Such adjectives are known as cumulative adjectives. A cumulative adjective is dependent on its following adjective, unlike an independent coordinate adjective. Consider the following examples. An unmarked police car has patrolled the area already. The toddler has ridden the wooden roller coaster twice already. Here, in these examples, as you can see, an unmarked police car has patrolled the area already, right? So here, your noun is the word car, right? But before car, we are discussing 3 adjectives before the noun car. The first adjective, or the first modifier being an article, which is one of the indefinite articles. Then we have unmarked, and then we have police, okay? Now, police is generally a noun, but in this case, it's performing or it's functioning as an adjective. So an unmarked police car has patrolled the area already. Here, we have no commas or no coordinating conjunction separating these adjectives, right? Why not? It's because these adjectives are not equally important. And is not as important as unmarked. Unmarked is not as important as police. Each of these adjectives are dependent on the one that on its following one. Each of these adjectives is dependent on its following one, and is dependent on unmarked. Follow this. It's unmarked, which is why we're saying and. Otherwise, if it was not unmarked, we would rather, if we dropped unmarked, we would just say a police car, right? Okay, so an is dependent on unmarked. Unmarked is dependent on police. Okay, which is why an unmarked police car. So an unmarked police, all these three adjectives are of unequal importance. Each of these adjectives is dependent on its following one. Since they're unequally important, since they're unequally important, that is why, or which is why, we have not put any commas to separate these adjectives, or we haven't put any coordinating conjunction to separate these adjectives. You follow? So these are known as cumulative adjectives, opposite to what coordinate adjectives are. When we use coordinate adjectives, we separate them with a comma. We separate them with a comma or maybe an and or an or, okay? Because they're equally important adjectives. Each can define the noun in its own right? But here, you cannot just say an car. You cannot say unmarked police car. You don't want to say just police car. You want to add more to it. So an unmarked police car. Each of these adjectives is dependent on the one that follows it. Okay? Which is why these are known as cumulative adjectives. Okay. The toddler has ridden the wooden roller coaster twice already. In this case as well, as you can see, the adjectives are the, which is the definite article, wooden, and roller. First of all, you want to be specific about the noun that you're talking about. So you're coming up with the definite article the, so you say the, and then you have wooden. Now you want to talk about the roller coaster, and the roller coaster is wooden. It's made of wood. And then what kind of a coaster is it? It's a roller coaster, right? So here in this case as well, each of these adjectives is dependent on the one that is following it, right? So on its following adjective. So the wooden roller coaster. Therefore, no comma or no coordinating conjunction between them. The toddler has ridden the wooden roller coaster. These adjectives are cumulative, not coordinate. They are unequally important. Okay, we've got some queries here, and look at them once again. Salahuddin Rana says, so where is modifier of place, when is modifier of time, how is modifier of manner? Yeah, there you go. You have your own answers. But what was your question? What did you really want to know? Is it true if we ask a statement about when, how we find the modifier? Possibly, yes, of course. But if you want to know where something has happened, you could possibly come up with. But then again, when you want to know the name of something or name of a place, for example, if you ask where has it happened, so if I answer you and I say that this has happened in Dhanmondi, right? So Dhanmondi is not an adjective, but it's a noun. It's the name of a place. It's a proper noun. If you ask me time, right? And if I tell you when something has happened, so for example, if I say that the accident took place at 4:30 p.m., the accident took place at 4:30 p.m. Now 4:30 is letting you know when something happened, right? So when I say 4:30 p.m., you come to know the time. That time is again not an adjective in this sense, because it's of course time is just time, right? Okay, if we say how something happened, if you have a name of the process through which or by which something has happened, then again you're taking a name, right? So that cannot possibly be an adjective. However, what I think you are meaning, or what you want to mean, or what you're looking forward to mean, is that you're actually looking forward to the adverbs, right? Such as an adverb of place, an adverb of time, an adverb of manner. We will come to know what adverbs are, and we'll get to know them tomorrow when we discuss adverbs tomorrow, inshallah. Okay, so for adjectives, we don't necessarily go with this particular formula. What we do is we just know what the rules of adjectives are, and we apply adjectives as such. Okay? All right. Mirahanuddin has another query. He says, is it wrong to say I have the news for you instead of I have news for you if I want to specify only one news? Yes, I discussed this yesterday already, but I would definitely clarify this for you once again. You cannot say I have a news for you, of course not, because news is an uncountable noun. News is an uncountable noun, and uncountable nouns cannot be counted, and therefore you cannot put a or an before it, because both a and an carry the number one, right? If you say a news, you mean one news, and you cannot have one news because news is uncountable. You cannot count it. It's like water. You cannot say, I have a water for you. You cannot say, I have a water for you. Can you? Of course not. If you want to offer someone water, you just say, I have water for you, or I have some water for you. I have enough water for you, like that, right? So if you want to talk about news, and if you want to mention, if you want to quantify news, then you have to use other words to quantify, but you cannot possibly say, I have a news for you. The best way to go about this is to say that I have some news for you. I have some news for you. If you want to imply that there is more than one piece of news that you want to share. Okay? Also, you could say, I have a piece of news for you. I have a piece of news for you, or I have a piece of information for you, or I have a piece of advice for you. So advice, news, information, these are all uncountable nouns. And uncountable nouns do not follow, or articles do not precede uncountable nouns. A or and, specifically, the indefinite articles do not precede uncountable nouns. The definite article the can be put before uncountable nouns, yes, as long as you want to be very specific about the uncountable nouns. Such as, for example, you could say, the news has shocked me. That's good. The news has shocked me. That you can say. But you cannot say, our news has shocked me. No. You could say, some news has just shocked me. Yeah, but the news has shocked me is good. Some news has shocked me is good. A or an information? No, that's incorrect. Okay? All right, I hope it's clear. All right. Ninzamon is asking, it seems too hard to understand, sir. Can you explain easily about cumulative adjectives, sir? Pardon me. Now, please, it's absolutely fine. If you don't understand, you do need to let me know if I'm not being clear about something. So thank you for letting me know. I'll try again, of course. So what are cumulative adjectives? Well, you see, this part is a little tricky, but let us try to be a little more patient, and let's see if we understand this, okay? So we use, many a time, we use several adjectives. We use several adjectives to modify or define a noun, okay? Right? All right. Now, there are rules when you put such adjectives before a noun. If you have one adjective only before a noun, then there is no issue, right? For example, I could say that this is a small phone. When I say this is a small phone, right? So I'm only using one absolute adjective to describe this, which is, of course, the word small. This is a small phone. But if I want to add more adjectives to define a noun, right? If I want to talk about two adjectives, or maybe more than two, but let's just, to keep things simple and easy, let's just say that we want to use two adjectives to define or to modify a noun. So we say that this is let's just say that this is a small black phone. This is a small black phone, right? So here, I'm using two adjectives to describe a phone, right? First, I'm saying small. Second, I'm saying black, right? Small, black phone. Both these adjectives are equally important. How so? How do you know that these adjectives are equally important? Because you can just say a small phone. At the same time, to define that very phone, you could skip saying small and you could just say that this is a black phone, right? So this is, in total, or on a whole, this is a small black phone, okay? But things are not so simple, at times, and you come up with several adjectives before a noun, but those adjectives are not equally important. Like our example here, an unmarked police car. An unmarked police car. Here, you don't want to talk about a car, and to define the car, you cannot just say unmarked car. You just can't. Why not? Because that is just not an unmarked car. What car is that? It's an unmarked police car. Now, you cannot just skip unmarked and just say a police car. You cannot do that either, because you don't want to just say it's a police car. You have to say that it is or it was an unmarked police car. So you see, these adjectives are not independent. They are dependent on each other. If you want to define the noun, you have to take all the adjectives to define the noun. You cannot skip any of them and just name one or just say one and define the noun. You have to use all three adjectives to define this very noun. So these adjectives are all interdependent. They're not independent like what do you call these? Coordinate adjectives, which is why these are known as cumulative, because they follow, each of these adjectives follow the one that precedes it, okay? That precedes one of them, okay? So an unmarked police car has patrolled the area already. So you have an, which is immediately followed by unmarked, and unmarked is immediately followed by police. Therefore, each of these adjectives is dependent, okay? All these adjectives are interdependent. You cannot just pick and choose. You cannot just say unmarked car. You cannot just say police car. You have to say an unmarked police car. Unlike this example of a small black phone, because you can say that this is just a small phone. If you say this is a small phone, it's fine. You don't need to define that it's a black phone. That's not a necessity. That's not compulsory to say. Right? You can't just say this is a small phone, or you could just say this is a black phone. Qualifying it as small or identifying it as small is not necessary or is not compulsory. You could just say this is a small phone, or you could just say this is a black phone. But on a whole, you want to discuss two qualities of this phone. So you come up and you say that this is a small black phone, right? But for this car, you cannot do that, right? You cannot do that. So why not? That's because you have to say, first of all, that this is a police car, and you cannot skip the word police, because it's a police car, and you have to say it's a police car. And then, of course, you have to say that it is an unmarked, or it was an unmarked police car. It was an unidentified police car, right? So you see, unidentified or unmarked police, these words are all compulsory or necessary for you to say, which is why these adjectives are not coordinate, are not adjectives of equal importance, but rather unequally important and dependent on each other, right? So they have to be uttered at one go. All of these have to be pronounced and to make full sense of the noun that follows. So you say an unmarked police car. And when you have such cumulative adjectives or adjectives that are interdependent, not independent, but rather interdependent, right? When you have such adjectives, you don't separate them with a comma, or you don't separate them with commas at all. You keep them without any commas. You keep them without any coordinating conjunction separating them, unlike coordinate adjectives, because I could say this is a small and black phone, right? I could put a comma between small and black, and I could say small comma black phone, okay? I cannot, however, just say small black and not put any comma between them. I cannot do that. If I do so, I would be grammatically incorrect, right? So what do I have to do? I have to say small black phone. At the same time, I have to put a comma between small and black. Or instead of putting the comma, I can also say this is a small and black phone. But for interdependent adjectives or cumulative adjectives, you don't have to, or you cannot put a comma or any commas between the adjectives, or you cannot put any coordinating conjunction between the adjectives, between the cumulative adjectives. Okay? All right, I hope it's clear. If it's not, you could rewind a little bit and follow through again. Russell Arman says, if we say black small phone, is it wrong? It is yes, because we maintain a particular order when it comes to adjectives, especially cumulative adjectives, but we'll get to it very soon. All right, now moving forward to the next slide. There you go, the order that we're going to discuss now. The order for cumulative adjectives, or for coordinate adjectives as well. All right, how so? Let's see. When we have several cumulative adjectives or adjectives of unequal importance describing a noun, we must follow a specific order to put the adjectives in their deserving places. The order, in short, is known as dosis comp. Dosis comp stands for determiner, opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, and purpose. Okay, so you need to go about in this particular order when you have several adjectives before a noun, which are defining that noun. So, for example, consider the example given here. A beautiful, small, old, round, white Italian cotton tablecloth. A beautiful, small, old, round, white Italian cotton tablecloth. You see this? Okay. So what are we doing here? We are actually using so many adjectives to be specific. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're actually using 9 adjectives to define a particular noun, which is cloth. And what kind of cloth is it? A tablecloth. So the word table in this case is not a noun, but rather an adjective. Okay? So first you come up with the determiner. A determiner is basically an article. Either it's identified or it's unidentified. If it's an unidentified object, then you come up with either a or an. Since it's given, of course, it's also singular, right? So you say a, because the very following word is beautiful. And you cannot just say and beautiful. You have to follow the sound of the word that follows it. So a beautiful, a being the determiner, after the determiner comes your opinion. So the tablecloth looks beautiful to you, so it's your opinion. But it could not it may not appear as beautiful to someone else. So since you have your opinion, you just put your opinion right after your determiner. So you say a beautiful, small, then you come up with the size of it. Now sizes are of course not opinion. Sizes are not like opinions, because a size, when something is small, everyone identifies it as small. So right after your opinion, you come up with the size of the thing. Then you come up with the age of the thing, such as, for example, how old it may be, right? You could just say fresh, you could say old, something like that. Young, so there you go. We've chosen, or we've used old here. Old, and then you come up with the shape of the object, which in this case is round. Then you come up with the color of the object, which in this case is white. Then you come up with the origin of the object, which in this case is Italian. And then you come up with the material of the object, which in this case is cotton. And then you come up with the purpose of the object. Why is the object used, or for which purpose is the object used? This is a tablecloth, so this cloth is actually put on a table, so it's a tablecloth. So purpose is put immediately before the noun. So you have a beautiful, small, old, round, white Italian cotton tablecloth. Okay? All right? Okay, we've got some queries over here. I'm going to take a look at these queries now. Ashik Rahman says, can't we say, I have the news for you? No, we can't, because we could, however, if someone is expecting a particular kind of news and you have that very news with you, so you could say that I have the news for you, or I have the news that you're looking for. Yes, maybe in that case, you could just possibly say that I have the news for you, but that's just unnatural, or that's very uncommon. We don't say like that. If we want to break a news to someone, if we want to break some news to someone, we just say that we have, or I have some news for you. Okay? Never say a news or one news or two news, not like that. I have just say that I have some news for you. Okay? All right. Sultan Al Arafat is saying, thank you for bringing the seemingly new concept of equal and unequal adjective. You're most welcome. I hope I've been able to make enough sense. And then Ninzamoni is asking, is the same, sir, dosa comp, and dosa comp? Well, how have I spelt it? How have I spelt it? Dosis comp, right? So first you have your determinants, DOSASCOMP. Remember, D stands for determiner, O stands for opinion, the first S stands for size, then you have A, which is age, and then you have the second S, which is again the shape, then you have C for color, O for origin, M for material, and P for purpose. So dosis comp. You say dosis comp. Okay? All right, so this is the order which you follow when you have to put multiple adjectives before a noun. All right? Okay, so yes. Then we have degrees of comparison. Degrees of comparison, right? Adjectives come in 3 forms: absolute, comparative, and superlative. Absolute adjectives describe something in its own right, such as, for example, if you say that she is a very tall person, right? Or he is a very cool person, right? When you say cool, that is, or adjectives in their own rights are absolute all the time, unless of course you want to make a comparison between two people or two objects, right? So absolute adjectives describe something in its own right. Comparative adjectives make a comparison between two things. Superlative adjectives indicate that something has the highest degree of the quality in question. Superlative adjectives indicate that something has the highest degree of the quality in question. Okay. Pardon the mistake over here. I mistakenly wrote cooler twice, but the first it was supposed to be cool, and then you have cooler, and then you have coolest. Tall, taller, tallest. Beautiful, more beautiful, most beautiful. Intelligent, more intelligent, most intelligent. For words that have only one syllable, right, such as cool, we add er with it. And for the comparative version, and for the superlative version, we add est. So we say cool, cooler, coolest, tall, taller, tallest. And then you've got some other adjectives that have multiple syllables, such as, for example, beautiful. So beautiful. You've got about 4 syllables here. So you cannot just say beautifuler or beautifulest. So you have to say beautiful, more beautiful, most beautiful. And we use the comparative version when we want to make a comparison between two people, right? So just for example, she is more beautiful than the other person is, okay? Or she is the most beautiful person among all of them, right? Okay. Now remember, when you go with the superlative version of an adjective, you must remember to put or use the definite article the before it. Okay, so never say just most beautiful, but rather say the most beautiful or the most intelligent. Okay? All right, I hope I'm clear. And then we have adjective turned nouns. What are these? Sometimes we turn certain adjectives to nouns to refer to a group of people, objects, or animals that have the same quality, and we rather define them or refer to them with that common quality of theirs. Consider the following examples. The rich often neglect their duties to the society. The injured have been taken to the hospital. The homeless are looked after by the government. Notice in each case, the adjective turned noun is preceded by the definite article the. Okay, so there are certain adjectives that can be turned into nouns. And when you turn adjectives to nouns, you need to put the definite article the before that adjective turned noun. Okay, and when do we exactly do so? When we want to refer to a group of people. When we want to refer to a group of people. Just a moment, yes. When we want to refer to a group of people or a group of objects, and we want to refer to them with a mutual quality or a common quality that they all possess. So when I say the rich, I mean rich people. But instead of saying rich people, I could just say the rich, referring to people who are rich, the group of people who are rich. So I can say the rich often neglect their duties to the society. And since when I say the rich, I mean a number of people, so definitely the noun is plural. Therefore, the verb that follows must also be plural. So we say the rich are, not the rich is. The rich are neglectful or are not dutiful or are not responsible enough towards the society. Or the injured. When I say the injured, I don't mean a singular person. I don't mean an individual who may have been injured. I mean a number of people who have been injured. So I refer to them not as the injured people, but I could just say the injured. However, if you do say the injured people, there will be nothing wrong. Okay, but you could just say the injured, and you will make enough sense if you do so. So you could say that the injured have been taken to the hospital. Similarly, homeless. Homeless is another adjective. So is injured, so is rich. So homeless, defining a quality sense, therefore it's an adjective, but this time the adjective has been turned into a noun. So we are talking about a number of people who don't have homes. So they're homeless people, right? So instead of saying homeless people, we can just say the homeless. We can just say the homeless, and we will make enough sense. So we can say the homeless are looked after by the government. The homeless are looked after by the government. Notice in each case, the adjective turned noun is preceded by the definite article, the. Okay? All right. So yes, this is it pretty much. This is pretty much it for today. If you're still confused with the with the differences between coordinate adjectives and cumulative adjectives, I cannot really blame you for being confused because those definitions are a little tricky or are confusing. However, I would like to suggest you to actually look them up on Google. There are many other websites that define the differences very clearly if you're still confused. So you can actually specifically look up the differences in Grammarly. There's a website called Grammarly, right? It's a very popular website these days. Nowadays, go to that website and see the differences between coordinate adjectives and cumulative adjectives, and I'm sure you'll learn more, inshallah. Okay, so I hope to come back to you all tomorrow again around this very time, inshallah, and we will be discussing adverbs tomorrow. So until then, everyone, please stay safe, take good care of yourselves, and keep me in your dua. Until then, Allah Hafiz.